Good evening, and welcome to the Sleeping Zoo. Facts to fall asleep to. This exploration compels us to gaze upwards to the dense, dripping canopy of the Indonesian and Malaysian rainforests, a world suspended between the sky and the ground, where we seek an animal whose name literally defines its existence, the orangutan, or person of the forest. These magnificent creatures, the only great apes native to Asia, represent an evolutionary pinnacle of arboreal specialization, masters of a three-dimensional landscape, where gravity is a constant challenge, and every movement is a profound calculation of weight and distance. To understand the orangutan is to immerse ourselves in a life lived almost entirely without solid footing, a life demanding an extraordinary suite of physical and cognitive tools, beginning with the unique physiology that enables its existence above the ground. The orangutan's physical form is a masterpiece of adaptation for suspensory locomotion, a biological blueprint radically different from the knuckle-walking gorillas or chimpanzees. They possess an extremely short torso and legs, but their arms are immensely long, capable of stretching more than 2 meters from fingertip, a span that often exceeds their height by 50%. This disproportionately long upper body structure shifts the animal's center of gravity downwards, providing essential stability while hanging and swinging and facilitating the practice of quadrumanous locomotion, meaning they use all 4 limbs interchangeably as hands for climbing and grasping, a characteristic reflecting their shared evolutionary history with other primates, but specialized for extreme flexibility and reach. Their hands and feet are structured less like the broad palms we associate with terrestrial primates and more like specialized hooks, with long curved fingers and toes that can wrap tightly around branches, allowing them to hang suspended for long periods with minimal muscular strain, a form of energy-efficient gripping. Crucially, the shoulder joint is highly mobile and flexible, lacking the stabilizing ligaments found in human shoulders, which allows for nearly a 360-degree rotation of the arm. This is essential for navigating the unpredictable branch structure of the tropical canopy, where stable footholds are rare. Their movement is not simply swinging, but a slow, cautious, and deliberate technique involving bridging and climbing. Bridging involves the ape stretching between 2 swaying supports, often 30 feet or more above the ground, gently testing the weight-bearing capacity of a branch before committing its full weight. A careful dance with physics. Their immense strength is concentrated in the arms and shoulders, making them significantly stronger pound for pound than humans, necessary for supporting their bulk while hanging from a single limb. This arboreal commitment is also reflected in their protective layer. Unlike the uniformly dark, dense hair of African apes, the orangutan is covered in long, sparse, reddish-orange hair. This distinctive coloring provides exceptional camouflage against the background of the dark tree bark, ripe fruits, and sun-dappled foliage of the tropical rainforest, a subtle but vital adaptation for a species that spends most of its day foraging alone, minimizing visibility to predators on the ground or in the air. While both sexes possess this remarkable arboreal physique, mature males develop a striking expression of sexual dimorphism that defines their status and role in the forest. Fully mature, dominant males develop large, fleshy cheek pads or flanges, technically called pads of adiposity, which frame the face and are accompanied by a large throat sac or laryngeal sac. These flanges are badges of dominance and sexual maturity, typically taking a decade or more to develop fully after a surge of testosterone. The throat sac functions as a powerful resonance chamber, allowing the flanged male to project his long call across immense distances of dense forest. A vocal display of territoriality, size, and attractiveness that defines the spatial organization of the entire orangutan community. The unflanged males, though sexually mature, remain physically smaller, resembling females, a strategy known as arrested development. This difference allows them to move discreetly through the territory and avoid direct, energetically costly confrontation with the dominant flanged males, often resulting in complex, alternative sneak mating strategies. The phenomenon of two fully mature male forms coexisting is a unique and fascinating aspect of orangutan behavioral ecology. The orangutan's physiology of digestion is equally adapted to its life as a pure arboreal frugivore, a diet that dictates its entire life pattern and movement. The Bornean orangutan Pongo pygmaeus, the Sumatran orangutan Pongo abelii, and the Tapanuli orangutan, Pongo tapanuliensis, all rely overwhelmingly on ripe fruit, which accounts for up to 90% of their diet, supplemented by young leaves, bark, honey, insects, and bird eggs. This dependence requires a complex, highly specialized, long digestive tract designed to process high volumes of fibrous plant matter and extract the maximum caloric value from low-nutrient jungle fare. Their digestive system must be capable of handling the high quantities of tannins and other secondary compounds found in rainforest fruits and seeds, which are often highly toxic or bitter to other mammals. The orangutan's sheer bulk means it needs to consume immense quantities of food daily, driving the need for constant, deliberate movement across large feeding ranges. Furthermore, during periods when fruit is scarce, they rely heavily on fallback foods like bark and pith, which demand even more digestive effort, showcasing the robust nature of their gut. This demanding dietary requirement directly governs the species' most distinguishing feature of behavior, its semi-solitary lifestyle, a profound rarity among the great apes. Unlike chimpanzees and gorillas, who live in large, stable, multi-male or multi-female groups, the adult orangutan is largely solitary, with individuals only interacting for short periods to feed or mate. This is not due to a lack of sociability, but is an ecological necessity imposed by the sparse, ephemeral, and patchy distribution of ripe fruit in the tropical rainforest canopy. The sheer body weight of a mature orangutan, which can exceed 100 kilograms for a large male, means that a large social group would quickly deplete the limited resources of a single fruit tree or grove, making collective foraging energetically unsustainable. Consequently, the adult female's world is typically comprised only of herself and her highly dependent offspring, maintaining large, overlapping home ranges where density of food dictates movement. The most profound social relationship in the entire species is the incredibly long mother-infant bond. An infant orangutan remains entirely dependent on its mother for food, transportation, and safety for up to 6 or 7 years, and may not fully disperse until it is 10 years old, the longest period of dependency of any non-human primate. This extended juvenile period is crucial for the transmission of cultural knowledge, representing an intensive, hands-on apprenticeship in survival. The young must learn an astonishingly complex catalog of skills from their mother, including the precise location of thousands of individual fruit trees, the critical timing of fruit ripening cycles, and the intricate structural engineering required for the construction of sleeping nests. This learning is not innate, but is acquired through intensive observation, imitation, and practice, making the mother the ultimate repository of ecological and behavioral wisdom, a walking encyclopedia of the forest. The complexity of their survival skills points directly to their extraordinary cognitive abilities. Orangutans consistently perform exceptionally well in tests of intelligence, exhibiting high levels of self-awareness, future planning, and sophisticated problem-solving. They are one of the few species, alongside humans, chimpanzees, and dolphins, to pass the mirror self-recognition test, definitively recognizing their own reflection, a key marker of self-awareness. Their daily life is a continuous exercise in foresight and engineering. Every evening before nightfall, an orangutan constructs a new, elaborate sleeping nest high in the trees, a complex structure woven from branches and leaves that takes approximately 5 to 10 minutes to complete. This nest building demonstrates advanced spatial planning, engineering judgment of branch strength and elasticity, and the application of construction techniques. The nests are often customized, incorporating small leafy pillows, roofs to keep out rain, or blankets for comfort. A clear example of sophisticated tool use, innovation, and culture that varies across populations. Beyond nesting, orangutans demonstrate impressive tool use in various contexts, though it is often regional and culturally transmitted, suggesting that the behavior is learned, not instinctual. For instance, in certain peat swamp forests in Sumatra, specifically the Suak Baliming population, they have been observed stripping branches of leaves and using them as spears or probes to fish for catfish or insects hiding in tree holes or crevices. In other populations, they use leaf sponges, chewed and compacted leaves to soak up water from tree hollows for drinking, a clear use of an object to modify the environment to achieve a goal. Their communication further demonstrates their intelligence. The dominant male's long call is a vital tool for spatial management, a form of acoustic mapping that ensures that females and rival males know his exact location and status, reducing the need for energetically expensive physical confrontation. Females are generally quieter and communicate through a variety of subtle kiss squeaks and alarm calls, often using the sound of snapping branches to signal alarm to others. All of these sophisticated behaviors underscore the depth and intellectual rigor of their highly complex, solitary existence. The habitat and ecology of the orangutan are inextricably linked to the fate of the tropical rainforests of Borneo and Sumatra, a relationship so critical that the survival of one depends entirely on the health of the other. The three recognized species inhabit slightly different ecological niches. The Sumatran orangutan Pongo abeli lives predominantly in the tropical peat swamp forests and lowland dipterocarp forests of northern Sumatra. The Bornean orangutan Pongo pygmaeus is divided into 3 subspecies across Borneo, inhabiting a broader range of swamp, lowland, and mountainous forest types. The recently identified Tapanuli orangutan Pongo tapanuliensis, the most endangered great ape, is restricted to a small, isolated patch of high elevation, montane forest in Sumatra, a critical difference that makes its population extremely vulnerable to localized threats. These habitats are defined by ephemeral resources, meaning food is often abundant but highly unpredictable, making the orangutan's long-term cognitive map and memory its most vital survival tool. Their ecological existence revolves around the chaotic, synchronized mast, fruiting cycles of the dipterocarp trees, a profound biological event occurring every 2 to 7 years when multiple tree species fruit simultaneously, creating an immense temporary feast across the entire region. During these mast periods, the orangutans gorge themselves, consuming massive amounts of high-calorie food to build up the necessary fat reserves to sustain them through the long, lean periods when only low nutrition, fallback foods like bark, pith, and insects are available. This highly synchronized, but irregularly timed, fruiting pattern is the main driver of their semi-solitary life, forcing individuals to travel immense complex paths to maximize their caloric intake and minimize inter-individual competition. The orangutan's role in its ecosystem is that of a keystone species, particularly as the primary large seed disperser in the forest canopy. Because they consume the entire fruit and pass the seeds intact through their long digestive tract, often traveling kilometers between feeding and defecation. They are essential for distributing large seeds far away from the parent tree, ensuring genetic diversity and forest regeneration. This makes the species an irreplaceable forest engineer, their movements and digestion literally shaping the composition, genetic makeup, and resilience of the rainforest, ensuring the propagation of the very trees that feed them. Without the orangutan, the long-term structure and biomass of the tropical canopy would be severely compromised, leading to a collapse in the ecosystem's complexity. The subtle differences in the ecology of the Bornean and Sumatran species, with Sumatran orangutans living in more predictable fruit environments and thus exhibiting slightly more social behavior and a greater reliance on tool use, underscores how closely their behavior is tuned to the specific ecological constraints of their islands. Regrettably, the orangutan's deep connection to its forest home is the very source of its modern tragedy, leading to a critical discussion of its dire conservation status and threats. All three species, Pongo abeli of Sumatra, Pongo pygmaeus of Borneo, and Pongo tapanuliensis, classified as critically endangered, facing an extremely high risk of extinction in the wild. Over the past 6 decades, the population of Bornean orangutans has declined by more than 50%, a catastrophic rate driven by a complex web of economic, political, and environmental factors. The primary and overwhelming threat to the orangutan is habitat loss and fragmentation, driven relentlessly by the global demand for a single commodity, palm oil. The vast contiguous lowland forests that historically served as the orangutan's heartland are being rapidly and systematically converted into monoculture palm oil plantations, agricultural ventures that have devastated the native landscape. Palm oil is highly efficient and cheap to produce, making it the world's most consumed vegetable oil, used in nearly half of all packaged supermarket goods, from food to cosmetics, and this immense sustained global appetite is the direct economic driver of the deforestation in Indonesia and Malaysia. The clearing process for these plantations involves massive, uncontrolled deforestation, often utilizing illegal logging and deliberate forest fires, a cheap but environmentally catastrophic method which not only destroy the food sources and shelter, but also trap and burn the slow-moving arboreal orangutans within the flames. The construction of logging roads and infrastructure for plantations further fragments the remaining forest patches, isolating populations and preventing the necessary genetic exchange that protects them from inbreeding. This process effectively turns once continuous forests into ecological islands, where small, isolated populations cannot sustain themselves against disease, resource depletion, or local fires, leading to a phenomenon known as the extinction debt. Furthermore, orangutans who survive the initial deforestation and wander into the newly cleared plantations are often perceived as pests that eat the young oil palm shoots, leading to deliberate killing or retaliatory violence by plantation workers, a persistent form of persecution that adds significantly to the mortality rate. A second persistent threat is the illegal pet trade. Infant orangutans are highly valued on the black market due to their human-like features and long dependency period. The only way to capture an infant is almost always to brutally kill the protective mother, meaning the illegal trade contributes a massive double blow to the wild population, the immediate death of a breeding adult, and the removal of a juvenile that represents years of reproductive effort and learned ecological knowledge. The resulting trauma and high mortality rate for captured infants has driven countless conservation efforts aimed at rescue and rehabilitation. Conservation efforts are now multifaceted, focusing heavily on rescue, rehabilitation, and the creation of protected forest corridors. Organizations run large-scale rehabilitation centers, such as those associated with the Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation, which take in orphaned or rescued infants and employ forest schools to teach them the complex survival skills they would have learned from their mothers, including foraging, nesting, and climbing safety, before their eventual reintroduction into designated safe forest areas. Furthermore, global initiatives have been created to address the economic drivers of the crisis. The Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, RSPO, is an industry body that attempts to certify palm oil produced without the destruction of high conservation value forests. However, this system remains controversial, with critics arguing that loopholes and lax enforcement often allow certified palm oil to still contribute to deforestation, highlighting the profound political and economic complexity of resolving the conservation challenge. The ultimate solution rests not only on protecting the remaining habitat, but on shifting global consumption patterns and ensuring full traceability and transparency in the massive palm oil supply chain. Given its striking physical appearance and its deep resemblance to humankind, the orangutan has an immediate and complex relationship with folklore and ancient legend among the peoples of Borneo and Sumatra. The very name Orangutan is a profound acknowledgement of this kinship. The local tribes did not see a mere beast, but a person who chose not to speak. The most common and enduring piece of folklore is the belief that orangutans can speak human languages, but choose not to, fearing that if humans knew they could talk, they would be forced to work and become enslaved. This legend reflects both a deep respect for the ape's intelligence and an understanding of its preference for the solitude and freedom of the canopy, giving the animal a spiritual agency and a subtle, knowing wisdom. This is a far more dignified and contemplative narrative than the simple monster tales often applied to other large wild animals. In some tribal belief systems, the orangutan is revered as an ancestor or forest guardian, a spiritual relative whose protection is essential for the health of the community. Taboos against hunting the orangutan often exist, driven by the belief that harming the ape will bring bad luck, disease, or the wrath of the forest spirits upon the offender. These traditional beliefs formed a critical layer of cultural conservation that kept the population stable for millennia, viewing the animal not as a resource, but as an integral, sentient part of the forest family whose intelligence demanded respect. This deep-seated respect, however, has often clashed tragically with modern industrial perspectives, which view the forest only as timber or agricultural land, shattering the old narrative of kinship. In popular culture, the orangutan occupies a unique, highly sympathetic role, contrasting sharply with the often aggressive, monstrous stereotype applied to gorillas and chimpanzees, such as the myth of King Kong. The orangutan is almost universally depicted as the wise elder, the gentle intellectual, or the philosophical sage. The distinctive facial flanges and slow, deliberate movements lend themselves to a persona of contemplative maturity and melancholy, making them the thinking person's ape. However, one of its most famous and complex portrayals is that of King Louie in the 1967 Disney animated film The Jungle Book, a portrayal that has undergone significant cultural and historical scrutiny. King Louie is a massive, charismatic orangutan who is the self-proclaimed king of the apes and attempts to gain the secret of fire from the human child, Mowgli. This character is notable because he is energetic, chaotic, and driven by a very human desire for technology and power, representing a departure from the typical wise ape trope. Importantly, King Louie, particularly in the original film, was voiced by an African-American jazz singer, Louis Prima, and his musical number, I Want to Be Like You, is a frantic improvisational jazz piece. This character has been widely criticized by modern cultural analysts as perpetuating harmful racial stereotypes by associating the large, chaotic ape with African-American culture and portraying the ape's desire to be like you, a human, as a crude, unsophisticated aspiration, a problematic narrative that stands in stark contrast to the ape's actual silent dignity. The subsequent 2016 live-action remake attempted to correct this by casting a different actor and toning down the more frenetic, minstrel-like elements, reframing him more as a gargantuan, terrifying crime boss, a powerful force, but one whose representation remains controversial. In contrast to this problematic figure, the orangutan's image is more often used in environmental media to evoke empathy and environmental guilt. Documentaries, particularly those focused on rescue and rehabilitation centers, utilize the intense, human-like gaze and the deep emotional bond between mother and infant to communicate the urgency of the conservation crisis, often using the tragic sight of an orphaned ape clinging to a caretaker as a powerful visual metaphor for the silent, ecological grief felt globally for the dying rainforests. The ape's profound isolation when its habitat is destroyed becomes the ultimate symbol of environmental displacement. Another curious cultural echo is its appearance in the realm of high fantasy and satire. In Terry Pratchett's Discworld novels, the librarian of the Unseen University is an orangutan who was accidentally transformed and, refusing to be turned back, uses his strength and arboreal agility to protect the infinite, chaotic stacks of books. He is a genius, a curator of knowledge, and a fierce defender of the library's order, communicating only with a resonant ook, yet his wisdom, functional competence, and profound loyalty are universally respected by the wizards. This portrayal reinforces the cultural trope of the orangutan as the intellectual of the primate world, whose silence implies knowing, not ignorance, a figure whose physical appearance is secondary to his intellectual and emotional depth. The orangutan's life, spanning decades in the precarious canopy, is a testament to the power of intelligence and specialized design overcoming a profoundly challenging environment. Its semi-solitary existence, its prolonged apprenticeship under the mother's tutelage, and its unique physiology for navigating the arboreal world all speak to a lineage perfectly tuned for a life of quiet mastery and intellectual rigor. Yet, its fate now hangs precariously on the decisions made far below. In the world of human industry and global commodities, driven by the ceaseless demand for palm oil, the person of the forest, once protected by ancient myth and revered for its wisdom, is now fighting the silent, desperate battle against the relentless march of bulldozers and the economic hunger for land. Their survival is not merely a matter of biological preservation, but a moral obligation for humankind, a duty to protect the wise, red-haired elder of the Asian canopy before its long, quiet history becomes a closed chapter in the story of life on Earth. The struggle to save the orangutan is, in the end, the struggle to preserve one of the planet's greatest remaining reservoirs of silence, wisdom, and wildness, an intelligence we are only just beginning to truly appreciate. The slow, deliberate grace of the orangutan as it traverses the shrinking canopy is a living, heartbreaking monument to what we stand to lose. Thank you, and good night.